This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders. Simon Easterby must think this is the easiest job in the world. Temporarily inheriting the most settled test side in rugby, this weekend the Green Gaggle picked up exactly where they left off in last year's championship. No creaks, no issues, and only one real selection headache. Even though the Easterby era will only last 43 days, there's no stench of the Liz Truss Premiership to how it started. The lettuce shirt boys starting with a pretty excellent win over an incredibly fired up and accurate English team. Easterby left no doubt wondering if coaching international rugby is supposed to be hard. So let's just get right into it. How did the Irish pull it off? How did England disrupt them so much? And do either of these two teams have what it takes to knock the French paws off that title in the 4 rounds to come? For me, the story of this game is broadly thus. England were brilliant until Ireland were brillianter. Steve Borthwick might be feeling like he has a slightly more difficult job on his hands at the minute, yet for 60 odd minutes, England were exceptional, shutting down every Irish challenge and repeatedly scrapping their way on top in a game Ireland controlled for most of the runtime, or beginning as they capitalised on the dominance of their opening 10 minutes through this try by debutant Murley. Whilst the English press have been trying to replicate the attention their Irish counterparts fly half debate has generated, not only is a battle between two posh lads called Smith much less compelling a story, it's also a non-starter as Marcus Smith is simply the form fly half in international rugby at the moment. This kick 10 seconds in is inspired. The weirdness of the kickoff and the way you have to position yourself differently has left the Irish defence all out of sorts, leading to Hansen defending flat and Keenan deep in the backfield. And if this sits up, it's probably a try for Slade in his support here. And this break 90 seconds later is sublime. He spots Tom Curry drifting inwards and targets Bairds outside. And sure enough, Curry gives him a little nudge and Smith goes straight through with Archie unable to make up the ground in time. The ball to Freeman over the top gives him time to then get back up to his feet and call 2 successive phases of forward drives, the second of 10, in order to shorten up the defence. And when the moment comes, it would be perfect but for a sensational bit of defence by Gary Ringrose, or Wingrose considering the position he's playing. He spots Murley, who plays with Smith week in week out at Quins, is looking for the kick, so when Smith hits Stewart through the back to go through the hands instead, it means Murley is now in front of Stewart and Ringrose shoots in immediately. One extra step might be the one that puts Murley back on side and hence allows Stewart to throw the pass, so he cuts it off straight away. Irish defence now on top, but at a slight cost. Farside winger James Lowe has pendulumed around to this side, also anticipating a kick, and leaves Gibson Park covering his wing and doing so pretty narrow. If this kick is a further metre in field here, Curry likely pops it over the top to Freeman, who rides a tackle to score, but as it is, England do need to wait an extra couple of minutes for that first try. There's a complete patience to England these days, something that in some ways worked against them as the game went on. They became too patient for their own good, but it's beautiful here. Ireland attempt to exit for a bomb, and even though they don't win it back, it's a good option by Prendergast. It gives the defence lots of time to get up and catch Stewart in his own half. Nothing is happening here, so Smith tells Mitchell to hang a bomb himself, and when Lowe beats Freeman in the air, Prendergast looks to vary his exit and tries to send a spiral past Smith. However, Marcus anticipates it brilliantly and just about covers the ground. The kick's lower trajectory gives him time to get back up to his feet and return it before the chase can reach him. The offload to Lawrence then catching JGB off guard and allowing him to jink round and burst through tackles. Mitchell is there immediately. There's a gap here in the Irish defence, so he looks to hold and engage Ringrose in order to shift that gap to be now outside the defender, but nobody is on his wavelength in time. Martin spots it much too late, meaning it shuts off and he's shut down. However, in trying to close it, Keenan has come up incredibly flat towards the line, and so when Curry engages Henshaw as he pops it off the floor here, it drags each Irish defender in one. As such, Archie turns his head to watch Smith as he hits the long ball out wide to Slade. Now 2-on-1 against an out-of-position flanker with Archie unable to make up the ground in time. Keenan is trying to join the line here initially, but Slade drops it on the toe and Murley heads after it. Instead of backtracking, the fullback makes a split-second decision to block the ball and misses, presenting Caden Murley with a dream first touch of international rugby, pulled left, right and out of shape by Smith and Mitchell's instinctive play. And yet, from the kickoff, following Smith's brilliant conversion, the game changed. England were still doing extremely well for the next 50 odd minutes, just they were now doing so under oppressive Irish control, the kind of mirror to history we're looking for in sport. Earl dropping the kickoff gave Ireland opportunity, which they so almost took, but from there, Easterby's chargers never let up and just put a foot on to keep control of the game at all times. This is brilliant play. Prendergast here shapes the kick long downfield, prompting Freeman to drop back, but he betrays his own body language to put in a dink wide, which Lowe then in turn plummets long behind Freeman. Or here, Ireland don't have a winger set, so no England players expecting a contestable high ball. Why would they hang on without anyone contesting it? But Caden Murley, working back in field to pendulum into the fullback with Stewart here behind where he expects the play to go, is caught out. Likely showing some clips of how Murley was positioning himself at half time, JGP hangs it. Murley has to cover some 30 odd metres, backtracking to get to a swirling ball in the air, and its path changes last second. As anybody who's ever played in the back three can tell you, this is the nightmare scenario. You're covering ground, you're going backwards, and you're trying to take a swirling ball. The nightmare only getting worse as he touches it as it falls, forcing him to try and run it out from his own goal line, eventually gifting Ireland a 5-metre scrum. And desperate to stretch this advantage, seeing a debutant kid's head drop after making the first error of his test career, Ireland just loaded him with individual moments, trying to put him under pressure because they knew there was a good chance he might crumble. This is a pretty good kick, but the chase is excellent and it just traps Murley on his own. He's got no support, forcing him to be the guy to make the kick, which he slices under pressure. And this is another nightmare to deal with. In the Premiership, he likely has time to dock this down, but at test level, he has to learn to drop on it or James Lowe will make you look like a twat, something that comes very naturally to him. This isn't to criticise Murley's game, there's an absolute test quality player there, but rather to praise Ireland for the pressure they put on one guy in seeing that he might crumble in certain scenarios. Yet, not content with hammering away at every chink in the English armour, Ireland also just outright refused to let England ever get on top. As we saw in the lead up to the opening try, over England's autumn, we began to see them run everything back from deep. If they're going to kick, they do so off 9 next phase. As such, England would fairly regularly kick long, looking to inspire a kicking battle from which they could then run something back themselves, potentially open something up against a more dislined defence. And Ireland just went, nah, unsubscribe. Every single kick battle England attempted to launch, Ireland put into touch, straight out on the full from their 22. The huge boots of James Lowe and Sam Prendergast getting them up to about halfway, declaring every result as a draw. No interest in winning anything launched on English terms, they'd rather take the tie and wait until they can attack on their own merits, something they clearly learnt to do in the week, inspired by a very special training session. And that was when they made a website on Squarespace. Squarespace allows you to do everything entirely your own way. No caving to the limits of your talent with HTML. The huge range of features on offer makes it incredibly easy to put together a beautiful website your way, your speed, either using templates and AI features and Squarespace's various built-in tools, or by being more granular and carving out your own system. Simon Easterby spent the entire Wednesday afternoon telling his players this over and over again until they eventually got the metaphor, but it was already too late. They were now addicted to making websites, adding storefronts, adding features, adding all sorts all over. It was just so simple, so fresh, so functional, up and running in no time. And if you want to do the same and build your own website, you can head to the link in the description and use the offer code SQUIDGERUGBY to save yourself a whole money on a shiny website made entirely your way. And yet so much of that control was tempered by England. Their aggressive hammer defence was a huge talking point going into the tournament, yet Saturday's game showed just why Borthwick et al. Are so determined to stick with it, as it did a near total job of shutting down Ireland for much of the match. This is a perfect example. The hammer differs from most defences because it targets spacers, not faces, and whilst Curry gets up in Burns' face, look at how Earl just tries to beat Hansen to the space he's about to run into. Hansen pulls out of running forwards and the ball goes behind him. He skips out of Earl's tackle, but is well met behind the gain line nonetheless. Because Ireland's attack is so much about small passes, drawing in tacklers, just beating them to the space caused utter chaos. Borthwick's side were clearly incredibly primed for the intricacies of how Ireland attack. England here repelled the Irish for a few phases, fantastic physicality keeping them out, but knowing the Green Brigade love to do this kind of thing, popping a ball out the back to Gibson Park as an auxiliary fly halfway, then whips it out to the back line to catch the opposition backs off guard, England are super alert. Slade reads it perfectly and actually thinks it's coming a phase early, so sets to sprint up, but stays ready for when Gibson Park pulls the trigger. Smith is literally in the starting blocks, and the moment it comes out, the entire backline fly up. Most defences want a man mark in this situation, but the hammer isn't about that. It's about the space, and it's about pressure, critically. Slade isn't marking anyone, he's just in Archie's field of vision, making him think he's under more pressure than he is, whilst Marcus Smith, who can't tackle, absolutely flings himself at Archie before the centre can react. He picks up Bundy and drives him backwards, catching 5 metres behind the gain line, while Slade wraps him up to prevent an offload. Itoje then eats JGP. Ireland now scrambling, going backwards, ball getting loose, and Itoje making a double effort, a second tackle. They catch them behind the gain line again, and when Ireland go wide, Lawrence gets in Henjo's eye line and throws off the timing, pass going loose. Likewise, aware that Ireland love to go to the top on 5 metre lineouts, watch Slade here absolutely smash out the blocks to block the pass to Bundy. Hansen is caught behind the gain line, and knowing Ireland like to target the forwards who were just out of the dummy maul, the forwards still getting back up to their feet, Itoje knows where this is going and can fly off the line again. line. There's space on the blind side here, but determined to make his massive drop in form on a Lion GO tradition, James Ryan runs a shit line that causes O'Keefe to give a penalty to England. And right, I just want to take a second. On the subject of Mario Itoje and Ben O'Keefe, I want to pay tribute to this. I gave Ben O'Keefe our Referee of the Year award last year, and he might have sewn it up for 2 years in a row with literally the first test match of his year, thanks to one of the best bits of refereeing you'll ever see. This is honestly incredible by Mario Itoje. He, with quite remarkable subtlety, just nudges James Ryan slightly. It causes his grip on Conan to slip slightly, him and Byrne coming from different angles, hence preventing Conan getting high enough to claim the ball. Itoje uses a forearm and never looks at Ryan, so there's literally no sign in his body language that he's doing this. Certainly not doing it deliberately, but Itoje is the best player in the world right now at cheating and getting away with it, so I'll bet he's done this 100 times in the Premiership and never once been caught. Yet somehow, miraculously, Ben O'Keefe spots it live. People moan about poor refereeing all the time, yet when a Dupont-Tier miracle happens, literally nobody prays the official who made it, and man, I think this might be one of the best spots I've ever seen from a referee after a world-class bit of cheating from Itoje that 99.99% of referees never notice. It was this kind of technical, subtle excellence combined with that fierce defence that England brought to this encounter. Ireland here used an incredibly wide pass off 9 to get outside the space marking and try to exploit the room left out wide, but Murley and Lawrence backtrack well, and having not haired it up to, put pressure on, Curry is in position hence to win a beautiful turnover. The ball bounces off Lawrence's bicep as he's rolling away, and it prevents Hansen getting it to ground immediately, which is all the invitation Curry needs. He locks one arm onto the ball, but plonks his other shoulder over Keenan, wrapping him in over the ball, meaning there's no way it's ever coming out, with his arm clearly on it. Ever with no regard for his own safety, he also rests his head on top of Keenan, meaning the only way anyone's going to clear him out is by making contact with his head first, and hence picking up at least a yellow card. It's the sort of breakdown genius for which he exchanged his hip and ability to walk after the age of 40, and it caused Ireland real problems. Yet it was after 50 that the issues really started for his team. This is a lovely starter move to get over the gain line. Bundy O'Keefe begins at the tail of the line out, allowing him inside the 50 metre and hence able to set before the backs are allowed within 5 metres of the line out. Dan Sheehan wraps around as Ringrose comes in to run a superb dummy line, mashing markers and giving Sheehan a one-on-one against Lawrence. JGP is into position immediately and dummies to Van der Fleer, who likewise bodies Curry, meaning Doris can target 10. Marcus Smith, who can't tackle, drops him immediately and rolls over the ball, slowing it right down. Ryan crumples behind the gain line, but the ball is so fast it doesn't matter. After Porter's carry, Ireland set into pick and goes, just sucking in England defenders one after another. Then, Slade gets a call from Earl and wraps around to the open side. And at that moment, Prendergast, off screen, starts reloading in the opposite direction onto that blind side, and just decides to wait his turn. With 4 England bodies on the deck, Conan makes a pick and go open side, the opposite direction that carries up until now to every phase, and whilst Genge makes a great hit, it prompts George Martin here to assume Ireland are now going open side and hence fold around the ruck. England's backs were previously numbered up to their Irish counterparts on the short side, hence Slade's departure he felt was fine, but Martin's movement forces Lawrence inwards to watch the ruck, and it's at that split second that Prendergast makes a brilliant call. With Lawrence now out the picture, it's a 3-on-2. Freeman marking him, and Mitchell is left in an impossible decision. The 10 flicks a lovely ball out to Archie, who barrels towards the line. Marcus Smith here, assuming he's going to cut inside, and slows down to account for it, but Archie instead goes for the Samoan sidestep and bundles right over the top of him, brilliantly riding 2 tackles and somehow grounding it in the corner. This is an incredible split-second spot by Prendergast and an all-timer finish by Bundy Archie. Ireland's 10 shirt has been up for much debate, but I think the axis we saw on Saturday really worked. Watching back a second and third time, Prendergast had a pretty sublime game, frankly. Much better than it felt on first watch, where blots like his shoddy goal kicking, Mornay stained the copybook. Crowley then came on and added exactly what was required for Ireland, a reliable pair of hands who wasn't afraid to open things up when it was on. Yet his impact, as with everyone else's, kind of pales in comparison to what we saw when Ireland unleashed the somehow overcame an ACL in 8 months man, Dan Sheehan. This is a brilliant zip pass by Gibson Park, letting Sheehan here run onto the ball and giving him plenty of time to eye up Baxter here. Conan is a separate forward group but breaks off last second to hit his outside, exploiting the disconnect between England's forwards and backs. Finsmith just about gets him to deck after the break, but Ireland are into shape absurdly quickly, and spotting no back has reached the wide channel, with Henshaw filling in at 10, Sheehan takes his centre berth and throws an absurd pass to James Lowe. Freeman is scrambling hard, initially jumping up in the main line and having to backtrack to reach Lowe, and the tackle is easily brushed off. Lowe racing downfield before giving the pass infield to let Sheehan explode between the Smiths to score, and heaven knows they're miserable now. This break down the wing was the cap on a particularly incredible performance by James Lowe, for me the best by any individual player on the opening weekend, and Antoine Dupont played. So did Elliot D. Ireland's opening try, finished by Gibson Park, was pure bullshit by Lowe, who was down injured less than a minute earlier. England's defence had been through a few phases, so it's sort of knackered here. It lacked the numbers to properly tackle the space, having been drawn in around the field by various forward carries. That gives Ireland an extra second on the ball. Prendergast's touch is lovely, and allows Ringrose the time to lob the wide pass. Marcus Smith is currently in the bin, so Tommy Freeman has dropped to cover his role in the backfield, with Mitchell watching the wing alone, and it gives Lowe an extra steps momentum before contact, allowing him to bust the tackle. He draws in Freeman, and JGP pulls off a pretty miraculous step on Stewart to go over and score. It doesn't feel like an exploitation of the extra man, but it's a brilliant way of knowing how England adapt to losing a back that allows them to get it wide, and hence Lowe to run right through and create this try. There were plenty more moments on the ball, and his kicking was excellent as ever, but he was also sublime on the high ball, making such a difference with those new blocking laws in place, particularly on the chase, but he was equally faultless in defence. Ben Earl here wins a brilliant turnover, and spotting Smith, Lowe makes an incredible read. First lining up the 10, then jumping into the passing channel, leaving Cowan-Dickey caught in possession and taken down by opposite number Kelleher behind the gain line. If he stands off here, Smith likely either goes through the gap himself or puts Stewart into space with Freeman on his outside, but Lowe not only shuts it down but gets Ireland on top. With Smith now off his feet, the England attack is scarcely set, and Van der Fleer makes a proper mess of this phase, eventually resulting in a phase or so later. Here we are, Slade just kicking it away because they're under such pressure. Lowe was imperious, exceptional, and only 1 week back from a hearty injury, which makes it just scarier for everyone else, keeping Ireland in the game even when England were broadly in control. 10-5 felt like a fair reflection at half time, but it's hard to argue on balance of the entire 80, Ireland didn't deserve this win. Simon Easterby might be sat somewhere in Dublin thinking he has the easiest job in the world, but this match was anything but a simple 4-4 victory. Ireland were forced to go up gears in a fantastic test match, overcoming obstacles and a team who seemed to have them worked out to come home with the full 5 points. It was frankly as impressive a win as they pulled off in the Six Nations over the last few years, getting that bonus point a real sign of how high quality they are, not just in attack, but particularly in that problem solving on the fly. Each try seemingly specifically exploiting how England's defence is attacking them on the day. They now head to Murrayfield, looking to keep alive the three-peat dream, whilst England welcome Antoine et al. To Twickenham, optimistic that this is the week where that world-beating 60-minute performance finally becomes a full-fledged 80. Thanks for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. That is part 2 of our ongoing Six Nations coverage. There was a video on Wales versus France out there as well. We'll be covering Scotland versus Italy on our second channel from this very little studio that we have.
So you can find out more Squid Rugby. We're going to do this in the kind of discussion type format that we do, but there'll be some big analysis points on there, and we may or may not preview some games in the...
Yeah, we'll look at that. There's Rugby Europe Championship as well to look at.
Yes. So there's more analysis that didn't even make this video and the previous video that we have ready to go there. So you can find that elsewhere on the More Squid Rugby thing.
If you've enjoyed any of this, I want to say thank you to everyone that has supported the channel on Patreon. We did a big relaunch last week. We've launched a Squid Rugby Discord. If anyone wants to jump in there, we're doing discussions during games. We're joining and saying what we think, team sheets being in it, all of it. So please, come and join in over there.
The most important bits that are saying on there. A, there's a channel dedicated to just good players, where we just remember a good player, like, I don't know, Hugh Vivian, good player.
Good player.
And B, there's a channel dedicated to just saying rugby over and over again. So if that doesn't sound like something you want to give money to support, then I don't care about what you are spending your money on. That's a very important thing that you probably want. So, probably they should go there to talk about
rugby.
Whack him!
Sorry for those of you who might have overheard something there. You shouldn't.